Hello there. Thank you for joining me today. I'm excited to be able to share about all the wonderful things that I know about liberatory practices and how you can bring those into your organization to meet your needs. I have worked with Center for Third World Organizing in the past and was so excited about being an organizational leadership development coach and consultant for the last Praxis cohort. Today, I'm excited to be able to share with you as well. So let's jump right in. My name is LaShonda Taylor, and I'm the founder and lead consultant with Strong Minds Consulting Firm. Today, we're going to be focusing on liberatory culture, scheduling rest, rejuvenation, and staff celebrations. This is a great opportunity for you to learn more about how you can lift health and wellness within your organization and a liberatory culture that will help to build morale, help you as a leader be the best leader possible, and set the example that you desire to see within your organization. So I want to jump right in so that we can begin to learn more about how we create the liberatory culture we want to see by scheduling rest, rejuvenation, and thinking more about staff celebrations. There are 8 dimensions of well-being: physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, financial, social, environmental, and occupational. As the employer, we probably already know that it is highly unlikely that we'll be able to speak to every dimension of wellness. But what we can do is support our employees in meeting some of those dimensions of well-being and ensuring that we are creating the liberatory culture that we say we want to see. Part of liberatory culture is taking care of ourselves in a way that feels restorative, rejuvenating, and refreshing for us. For the mainstream, and you know who I'm talking about when I say mainstream, things like annual vacations with their families to tropical, foreign, or the family vacation home, using those allotted 14 vacation days they get a year, meet their need. But I'm going to ask you to think outside the box and think more about the need of the employees versus standard practices, in parentheses, if you know what I mean. Say, for example, you have an employee who has a child who has games every Thursday evening for a 3-month season of some sport or activity. But it takes them about an hour and a half to get home, so they never get to see the start of the game or be there when their child walks out on the field or court. As an organization that's seeking a liberatory culture, what if, for that employee, you provided an opportunity for them to leave at work every Thursday at around 3:30? This would ensure that they would make it home in time to see the game and that they wouldn't be penalized for not working a full day. I assure you that in most cases, that employee would feel supported, have a higher morale, and would likely be more focused and a more dedicated worker because their needs are being met. But also, the organization's needs would be being met because instead of having the employee sitting at their desk thinking about how they're going to miss the game and how disappointed their child is going to be because they weren't there, and because they're probably not being very productive at that time, thinking about how you can meet their need. Or there could be other things that would be happening that could be negative. There could be driving recklessly through traffic, endangering the lives of themselves or others, or running the risk of being pulled over by a law enforcement officer that sees this as a tense situation and this could end in lethal consequences. But if you allow for them to leave at 3:30 in order to get to their child's event, whatever it might be, they are likely excited to come to work, do their work, and be able to go and support their child. So as far as I can see, it's a win, win, win. And all it took was a liberatory culture to shift the boxed way of thinking that includes this whole idea of no work, no pay, or having to use your really valuable vacation days to meet your need, when in fact you could actually build out a culture of take what you need. I want to share some statistics that I think are important for you to know. These are from 2020, likely prior to COVID, but nonetheless, I want to share them. More than 69% of workers feel fatigue at work. So over half, well over half, feel fatigued at work. Another statistic that's really important, 97% of fatigue workers have reduced cognitive performance, losing up to almost 6 hours of productive time per week. Now think about that. If they are working, say, 50 hours a week out of the 52 weeks in a year, then you are losing about 300 hours of time and they're not being productive because they're fatigued. Another fact, 13% of all workplace injuries are caused by fatigue because fatigue affects safety. So not only will it cost you about 300 hours of paid time with an unproductive employee, it could also cost you a significant amount of money in health-related injuries. Additionally, there's a cost for employee absenteeism. So things like just taking off work or the old gotta call off today. And the presenteeism, which I talked about, which is exorbitant. 300 hours a year are being unaccounted for because staff or employees are feeling fatigue. That is a really high cost. And work environmental factors are one of the top 2 causes of occupational fatigue. So back to the example I opened with, allowing the employee an opportunity to go support their child is a great remedy to this issue. It's important to ask what the employee needs instead of making assumptions. Say, for example, you thought, well, it'd be easy for them to just take time off and go to the games. But it's not that easy because they have other responsibilities that they have to tend to during the official vacation days. So if you don't make assumptions, it'll provide an opportunity to reinforce the liberatory culture of your organization and build out an individualized plan that meets the needs of the employee and the needs of the organization. Let's look at another scenario and see how we can incorporate our liberatory culture of thinking about rest and rejuvenation. So let's just say you had a dedicated employee for the last 3 years. Lately, though, they've been forgetful, they seem distracted, they're making more mistakes than usual, and they're not as sharp as they used to be. This has been going on for about 2 months, and it's time for their performance evaluation, another non-liberatory practice or process that is in a lot of organizations that we can talk about at another time. I digress. But let's just say you call them into your office for their official performance evaluation meeting. and you're sharing about their performance or really lack thereof, and you see tears welling up in their eyes. What do? Many employees would chalk that up to emotion or the employee having difficulty receiving feedback. Or you could simply ask what's bothering them and create a safe space for them to share by ensuring them that you want to be supportive, but that you need to know how to best help them. They share with you that they have a terminally ill friend, maybe a family member, that about 3 months ago was given 3 months to live, and that they're getting progressively worse, and that they only have 1 month remaining on the doctor's prognosis. What can you do to support that staff member? In a liberatory culture, this would be a great time to schedule time off and put a plan in place with the employee with no penalties. This, in turn, would allow the staff member to take the time they need with their loved ones, support their loved ones in their transition, and have time to grieve before they return to their role, really having felt supported and likely transformed into a staff member who will want to be back at work and feel dedicated to the organization. This simple act of giving time off, again, without penalty, or maybe even adjusting their work hours, can lead to a number of wonderful outcomes. One, it could strengthen the employer-employer bond. So imagine if this person doesn't feel supported, they're going to continue to respond and behave in ways that aren't up to par in many instances. As we mentioned before, their performance had been lacking. And so without the strengthening of this employee-employer bond, there's no opportunity, quite honestly, for them to feel and to regain their productivity. But if you allow for adjustment of their work hours or allow for some scheduled time off so that they can move through these processes of grief and transition, you can strengthen the employee-employer bond. You likely, too, would get a quicker return to work. When folks feel supported, they want to return that level of support. So instead of lollygagging or taking more time than necessary, what they would likely do is return to work more quickly. It could also strengthen the organization's positive reviews. Maybe you're aware, maybe you're not. But nowadays, with social media being what it is, websites like LinkedIn, Glassdoor, or even Indeed are now asking for reviews of the employer from previous or even current employees. If you allow for an opportunity to support your employees during a time of difficulty, you're likely going to get positive reviews. And what I know is that when people are looking for employment, they're now using these reviews as a way of seeing if this is even an organization that they're interested in being a part of. So imagine having positive reviews that say things like, felt supported, really feel understood here. All of the kinds of things that help people to want to be a part of an organization that might, in some ways, even trump how much of a salary they're going to be receiving or how much pay they're going to be receiving because they feel supported. It also shows employees that they are valued. That is awesome for employees when they're thinking about how they want to show up in the workplace. If they feel valued, They likely are on time, are productive, are willing to stay late, are willing to take on more work, are willing to accept pay that might not be up to par in many instances. And we know in nonprofits, oftentimes there are lack of funding or soft dollars so that the positions are grant funded and are really restricted in the way in which the salary is allocated, or the salary amount, I should say, is allocated. So if you're able to show employees that they're valued by providing them with other supports, you could really move things forward. Some additional supports could be, while they're off, scheduling check-ins to see where they are. Sometimes that just says, we care. We care more than it might seem. Another thing to do is to be mindful of their stages of grieving. Grieving has a number of stages. Sometimes they may be depressed and have a hard time moving through their day or even getting to the workplace. Sometimes they're really stressed and their mind is going other places, and so they're not as focused as they would be. Sometimes they're in deep thought, right? And they're unable to really focus in the way that they normally would. So what you want to do is make sure that you're recognizing where they are in their stages of grief. You should also think about commending them for their strength and courage when they return to work, and let them know that you appreciate them doing so during this difficult time. This will help them to see not only that they were missed and valued, but that you care enough to thank them for being courageous enough to return on time. That is a really important piece for a number of employees, and it's a simple gesture from the employer. One other thing you can do that would really be helpful is, even though they've returned to work, to still provide flexibility. Be willing to adjust according to their needs. Give them resources that are available. There are some really well-established nonprofit organizations or agencies that have employee assistance programs that include things like counseling services. Or you may personally know about a church or an organization that provides free counseling. Share that with this employee so that they know that they're in a good place and space to receive the supports they need. You also should keep other employees informed. Of course, as much as the employee who's going through this process will allow for. But by doing so, you actually build the empathy that is necessary in order for folks to pick up the slack or to be warm and welcoming to that employee when they return. So think about those things, because these are all practices that could be put in place to assist in the health and wellness culture of your organization. It could also be standardized practices in your organization as a clear way of creating a true liberatory culture. Another organizational-wide way to establish a liberatory culture that reinforces rest and rejuvenation is to think about the flow or the slow times in your organization, so that you can use that time to have an organizational-wide time off. So this oftentimes is seen as an incentive to staff, and in turn, they are better workers and have something to look forward to every year. These are important and simple ways that you can shift the culture of your organization to be more liberatory. Slow times happen in every organization. Sometimes it's Christmas time, so you give them that 2-week break when you're really down and slow during that time. But it might come in the fall in October. Have a small week break. Or in the spring in March, have a small week break. Or during the winter in January. Whenever your slow time is, heavily consider saying, let's take this time off to get the rest and rejuvenation we need, And I assure you that you will see a growth in morale. I assure you, you will see staff who want to show up and staff who want to be productive. Another key piece to staff health and wellness are staff celebrations. In traditional workplaces, staff are not usually celebrated unless it's the annual, holiday party, or they're a committee of employees who have created a birthday club. The few folks that get together, put in a few dollars, and celebrate whomever's birthdays are in that month, maybe going so far as to decorate their office or cubicle. But it's kind of this employee-generated way of celebrating staff, not the employer actually celebrating staff. So some simple ways to celebrate staff could be a monthly staff recognition that could be as simple as an internal email to a staff member and a $10 gift card, which would cost the company about $120 a year, and a card of appreciation. Or another one is, the safety meeting every quarter, where staff are invited to come out to a restaurant or to a place to be celebrated. A specified dollar amount could be spent on food, and staff would be responsible for buying their own drinks, whether those were cocktails or mocktails. Although I've worked in traditional nonprofits and large government agencies, I have always prioritized staff celebrations. And in turn, I've always had a high morale from my staff, a very responsive team, and they made me ultimately look good. In some places, there was no budget at all. So we would gather together for a quarterly potluck where I'd share out appreciations for staff, and they could also do that for each other and even towards me if they felt compelled to do so. Other organizations or agencies that I worked for, I was able to budget in an annual amount to be spent on activities that celebrated staff. Either way, with or without a budget to celebrate staff, I made a way. A few other ways are to promote work-life balance. So simple things like no work emails between 7 p.m. and 5 a.m. This would allow for folks to be really focused on their family without thinking about the stresses of, did I answer that email? Did I get that back? Did I send that off? But really being present with their family and loved ones so that when they return to work the following day, they're equally as present. And let's just say, for example, they did send an email during those non-email hours. You would approach them and you would say to them, hey, I realized that you sent an email during our non-email hours. I really want to reinforce how much and how important that policy is to our employees and to us as the employer. And so I don't want you to send, unless of course it's an emergency, in which case I would actually rather a phone call so we can talk through the problem quickly than you spending time creating an email. So by reiterating to them the importance of this particular agreement that you have around emails not being sent through those hours, it would help them to know that you mean it and that they will not be penalized. It will not be punitive if they don't send emails during that hour. Another way is to invest in trust building. Being transparent is really important to most employees. Statistics show that 80% of employees want to know about the decision-making processes. Is it a top-down structure where they'll never be included? Is it community-based? Will they ever have insight or an opportunity to participate in the decision-making process? Those things are important. And 87% want to know how they can move forward and grow in the future of the organization. So if you're transparent and you're able to show them you're starting here, but you have the ability to move here by moving through this process, that transparency will help to build trust. One additional one that is also a way to make sure that you are celebrating staff and staff input is to talk to employees to get feedback or having anonymous surveys and asking questions like, what keeps you here? Or what would you like to change? All of those things are important, but this final one, I think, goes a very long way. Creating and or supporting employee-led initiatives. And you can do that by first listening to what they want as wellness activities and then be responsive to their needs. There are easy ways to do that. You could develop a corporate relationship with local yoga studios or support healthy lunch options or hold wellness classes on site or provide small or large stipends depending on your budget to support wellness. One of the things that I used to do is I would actually bring in college students who were studying in a particular field. So for example, I called our local massage therapy school and asked if they had students that needed to earn hours and earn experience. And they said, absolutely. So I created a spa day for staff, for employees, where they were able to get 30-minute massages from students at the massage studio, so the massage school. The employees absolutely loved this staff appreciation. And it was another win-win because the students from the massage school were able to also earn their credit hours and experience hours. And all we had to do was tip the student. They cost us $10 to $15, maybe even $20 per staff member, but a really small price to pay for 30 minutes of a massage, a great massage. And what ultimately happened was morale was boosted and staff were excited about the staff day that they encountered. How I want to close our time together is in a worksheet that I'm also going to be sharing with you that will be attached either with the presentation or as a way for you to work through. I'm not sure, but you can ask those questions to C2, who will be able to support you in that work. But I want to take us to our next slide. The way to creating a liberatory culture of wellness. So we'll start with W, work-life balance. So like I mentioned before, no emails between 7 p.m. and 5 a.m. Now, as I mentioned, this will be a worksheet that will be available for you to share with staff and see what works for them, or for you to share with leadership and you guys build this out to then share with staff. But an example would be, the W would be work-life balance. The E would be that employees are required to take an allotted amount of time off annually. So it wouldn't be this buildup of having vacation time build up because they haven't taken vacations over the years, but rather they are required to take an allotted amount of time off annually to ensure that they're getting the rest and rejuvenation they need to be successful. An example of the L could be leave it up to the employees to design what time off looks like to them. So it could be going off early every Thursday, like I mentioned before, to their child's game, if you will, or activity, supporting their activity. Or it could be taking a 2-week vacation, but let the employee design what that time off looks like. The other L would be let employees know what their future looks like in the organization. Like I mentioned before, when folks know how they can grow and where they can go, it creates trust and it allows for them to have a healthy, safe, and trustful relationship with their employer. So let the employee know what their future looks like so that they can see where they can grow and where they can go. And never assume, always ask the employees what they need or want. Don't just ask the question, but be ready to truly listen to what their responses are. It's likely not a one size fits all, but you might see some through lines that you can implement as organizational wide liberatory cultural practices that are in place for all employees. Next, expect that burnout will happen and encourage on-site wellness activities or wellness stipends. So you can bring in people for team building activities like paint and sips, or you can provide stipends for them to go and participate in an activity that will help them with wellness. Or you can bring a yoga instructor on site. There are a number of ways that you can help to make sure that you are tending to the employee burnout that might be happening. Next, think about a starting time window that varies or flexible to meet the employee's needs, so they can show up to work anytime between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. This will allow for them to not feel the stress if they get up a little late, or they miss their alarm clock, or they miss their train, or they're caught in traffic. They're able to know that they have the ability to come in between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. without there being any type of punitive measures happening towards them. And finally, the final S would be to have staff celebrations, which are just the acknowledgement of staff on an incremental basis, whether that be monthly or quarterly or whenever you choose. But knowing that these are just some of the ideas that I encourage you to think about when you think about your specific organization. And I encourage you to create a wellness list that you can incorporate into your organization across the organization. I hope our time together has been both informative and helpful, and that you got something of value to implement into creating a liberatory culture for rest, rejuvenation, and staff celebrations. Like I mentioned at the beginning, my name is LaShonda Taylor, and I'm the founder and lead consultant of Strong Minds Consulting Firm. If you're interested in following up with me because you want to learn more about practices that you can implement, liberatory practices specifically, that you can implement into your organization, I have my contact information here where you can simply scan the barcode and get all of my information, or you can send me an email to strongmindsconsultingfirm@gmail.com. Again, thank you for participating today and listening to the various ideas I have around how you can create a liberatory culture and how you can actually schedule rest, rejuvenation, and staff celebrations. Thank you so much for our time together. Have a wonderful rest of your day.